I'm Pat Janulis. I'm at Northwestern, and I work with a team, as you've heard, on Network Canvas, and hopefully all of what was just said is true, and you'll be excited to learn about the project. So Network Canvas, the overarching kind of framework, is a touchscreen, tablet-based interview tool. I'm going to go through kind of where it came from. It explains really kind of the benefits of the approach. But the basic idea is that it's a software suite that can help you build an interview, deploy it to a tablet, and then get the data hopefully quickly and easily back to a computer so you can analyze the data in any kind of software that you desire. It's really built out of our struggles with our own data collection and the kind of challenges that we continue to face on trying to do this easily and simply, and both on our end trying to create these things and use them, as well as on the participants' end trying to provide this information to us. So as you know, I'm sure Jimmy thoroughly covered, the basic idea and the premise here is that we want to get this abstract idea of a network into some data. This is a traditional adjacency matrix representing the ties between these individuals we see on the right. Frequently, particularly, we focus mainly on personal or egocentric networks. Frequently, this was done in a kind of dyadic census, which is, as you can imagine, a pretty tedious event where we're asking about the possible connections between every single person in the network. So this would be, does person number 1 hang out with person number 2? Does person number 1 hang out with person number 3? Does person number 2 hang out? And so on and so forth. So this is both like tedious to ask these questions. It's cognitively demanding for the participants to provide this information. And it's just not a great experience, either on the interviewers or the interviewee. So some smart folks, in particular here we have Bernie Hogan and Barry Wellman, came up with this idea of a participant-aided sociogram. And this takes that other experience and actually kind of makes it more tangible and visual. In this case, we have, they frequently use Post-it notes on the right side. So the participant would draw their network rather than kind of asking about each potential tie. They would place the nodes or the network members among these concentric circles, and then visually draw kind of connections between them to indicate a certain kind of connection. So the data itself was kind of elicited in the same manner, where you would have a name generator and then an edge generator, except when in the name generator, you would physically kind of create these nodes, and then the edge generator would be physically drawing connections between individuals. This also allows for kind of quick capture of things like multiplex ties. So you can have one color indicate a certain type of tie and another color indicate another tie. And then Bernie and Barry created a system that kind of quickly got this data into a computer format where we can use in network analysis tools. We have personally used this, or in particular Michelle Burkett, who is one of the PIs of the Network Canvas project, used this in a study of 175 young men who had sex with men in Chicago. But in this case, she used a whiteboard, but the premise was very similar, where we have these kind of, in this case, a whiteboard and magnets. So we have these names that are written on these magnets, and they're arranged, in this case, not necessarily as concentric circles, but then the connections are created through physically drawing connections on the whiteboard, and then there's some circles for certain groups or kind of a closely connected clique, for example. But nonetheless, this process still took a lot of time. So even for 175 participants, the average kind of interview took, I think it's like an hour. And then we have the process of double coding this data. So we literally just took pictures of this and then had research assistants code it, double code it into a database. This takes years from data collection to using the data in any kind of meaningful way. So the link study of 175 guys led directly to this larger cohort study, RADAR, which is PI'd by Brian Mustansky, of 1,000 young men who have sex with men in Chicago, and it's also longitudinal, so they came in every 6 months. We wanted to collect that same type of data for the RADAR study that we did in the link study, and the problem was we wouldn't be able to logistically do that. Because of this kind of dilemma, Michelle, in particular, decided to try to digitize or use a digital version of this participant-aided sociogram. So we still wanted the kind of the ease and the user-friendliness of participants drawing their networks, but we wanted to put it on a digital platform. So there was some basic requirements that Michelle laid out. So it's got to be intuitive. We're trying to leverage this method specifically for its kind of easiness. But we also had some complexity, such as you need up to 40 nodes. You want, obviously, the alter-to-alter connections, so the perceived connections between the ties, or the individuals. And we also wanted kind of complex node and edge attributes, so things like first and last, the state of first and last sex between the people that are being named. And we also had this kind of dynamic aspect, longitudinal across waves. So it's kind of a lot of requirements that we were looking for. Luckily, Michelle knew Bernie, and he had a PhD student, Joshua Melville, who's now our lead developer. And they were kind of working on an early version of this digital participant-aided sociogram already. So we collaborated with them on the NetCanvasser project. So NetCanvasser is a kind of precursor to Network Canvas. And this was implemented and still is currently being implemented on this longitudinal cohort study of young men who have sex with men. The basic idea was, literally translating this kind of participant-aided sociogram onto a touchscreen tablet. In this case, we use these really big all-in-ones to capture that data in a lab. So we did, because this was a new kind of methodology, we did want to do some initial kind of examining the validity, or at least evaluating kind of how it worked. So we have a Chi paper, or Bernie led this Chi paper. On the right, we just have this word cloud. We asked folks to just provide a one-word kind of their understanding of the software. And so we have things like interesting, interactive, simple, different. We also use kind of standardized usability scales, and in this case, people found it very usable. So we achieved our goal, at least to the extent that we had something that people thought was intuitive and easy to use. It was also a lot more efficient. So the link study was averaged 47 minutes with a pretty kind of wide variance. The radar study, which was almost an exact translation of this protocol, was much shorter with a smaller variance. So once we started presenting on NetCanvasser, which was a specific protocol for the specific study, we got a lot of feedback that people just wanted to try it. They wanted to use it. They wanted to customize it. Unfortunately, that was a terrible experience to do. So essentially, you just needed you needed a developer with lots of JavaScript capabilities, and it would take a lot of time. And my postdoc before I became assistant professor at Northwestern was essentially getting the data out of Network Canvas, or the early version, NetCanvasser, and getting it in a usable format. That took years to do. So even that was kind of very labor intensive. So this led us to write the Network Canvas. So this is an R01 funded by the National Institute of Drug Abuse. And the entire project is focused on expanding and hardening this software. It's also focused on taking this kind of one specific protocol and making it a suite, so you can build your own interviews, you can deploy them easily, and then you can get that data without making a postdoc do it for 2 years. So these are really the three components that align with that. So the first is the architect. That's just a point-and-click kind of graphical user interface to build your interview. We have the Network Canvas app itself, which can be deployed on any kind of touchscreen tablet. So it's operating system independent. So we have Android, iOS, Windows. It can even run on Mac, but that doesn't have a touchscreen. And then we have the server, which runs on the traditional Windows and Mac that can get that data from Network Canvas. So again, we had some guiding principles that we wanted to continue on with, that were built both from the participant-aided sociogram as well as our early experiences with NetCanvasser. The first is end-to-end workflow. So again, we didn't want that. We didn't want to require a developer to create an interview. We didn't want to require years of work to get that data in a usable format. So we really want this streamlined process where you can create an interview, you can get it out in the field the next day, and you can get your data that same day. So the end-to-end workflow is a real focus of the project. An overarching kind of framework we also use is simple screens. So we try to simplify the data collection, and that kind of manifests itself in the interview protocols, where we try to make it so participants are only really doing one action on each screen. We also try to make it use the kind of frameworks that everyone is familiar with in things like tablets and smartphones, and using these same kind of gestures and things like that. So it's both, people come with this pre-existing knowledge about how to interact with these interfaces. And I'll show a bunch of examples of those. And then finally, open science and open software. So the project is on GitHub. We're in the very early phases. It's Alpha 3 to be technical. But it's there. People can use it. Hopefully, in the coming years, people will be able to modify it and add cool, exciting features. And we're really trying to promote that relationship with the network analysis community, and hopefully even broader than that, just folks struggling with collecting kind of complex data. And I'll talk a little bit at the end about the other kind of ways folks can get involved. So I'm just going to go through a few. A few of the screens that we have. So this is just, as you can see, the kind of intro screen, but it emphasizes a few things. So it emphasizes kind of the connection with the server. So right there, it's a video of it searching for the server. Basically, if you're on a VPN with a desktop computer that's running the server, it's going to say, look, there's these servers. Do you want to connect? And then there's a pairing process to establish a secure connection, just like Bluetooth, where there's going to be an array of numbers that you have to type in that matches with the server, and therefore you can establish a connection. So then from the server itself so the server gets the data at the end, and it also can send the protocol. So it's kind of the way that you can communicate between the two. We also have, you can just use a URL, so that's how we mainly deploy protocols right now, but that obviously requires an active internet connection. You can also load a local protocol if you have a file saved on the device. But again, what we're really trying to do is have maximum flexibility for how people can interact with this and use it. So a lot of use cases, you're not going to have an internet connection, so we have a solution for that. And you can preload protocols through the server, so if you're connected right now, you can do that, and then you can go anywhere you want to actually collect the data. Yeah, so this is just a name generator, and I'm sorry, it should be full screen, but I'm a novice at creating QuickTime videos, so nonetheless, the basic idea is that there's a name generator at the top, and then, so you click that little button to add a new node or a new network member, and then it's just quite simply following a normal kind of left to right, going through the interview, adding different information, and these forms are wholly customizable. In this case, we're collecting age, gender identity, sexual orientation, which are obviously things that we focus on in our work. But this is only one way to collect this data. There's also a number of other ways I'll show you in a moment. And these are basically just normal internet forms where you can provide any kind of information on the members of your network. And so you can have as many name generators as you want. As Jimmy just talked about, there's lots of complexities in forming these kind of things. But this is just an example. So in this case, we have the actual building of the network. And like I said, it's really kind of just physical aspect. So here we have a cursor, but you're really just dragging and dropping. So all the folks start up in the right, and the participant can lay out the network members in any manner that they want. But the common guiding principle is that you want to put people that are closely connected more physically closer on the screen. That just simplifies the stage of actually creating connections. So when I talked about we want one action at a time, we generally have the layout as one step and then edge creation at a later step. And obviously you can have multiple edge creation stages, and you can, for example, make those the edge connections color differently. And in this one, this is the next stage after the layout, and really you're physically just tapping and touching on folks to create connections. So once again, we're trying to really leverage the tactile nature of this process and have visual clues to help with that. So you can also remove a connection by tapping the same two individuals again. We're also implementing things like directed ties, although the use cases of those are going to be more limited when you're talking about perceived connections between individuals. So beyond those screens, so this is actually NetCanvasser, just because these screens aren't fully developed yet in the actual version, but the basic premise is the same, except it looks a lot uglier. So here we have an ordinal bin is what we call this. It's just how you describe an ordinal characteristic with each of your network members. In this case, it's frequency of communication. And here you can see you're just physically, again, dragging and dropping folks into the bins. We jokingly call this the Burkett method of ordinal binning because Michel Burkett invented it. But you can see that it's both allows you to quickly kind of provide this information as well as kind of change decisions if you are comparing across different people or if you just accidentally put the person in the wrong bin. So we use videos to try to illustrate this stuff, but it is hard to emphasize or hard to articulate how much easier this is than scrolling through kind of a traditional survey and clicking along an ordinal question. Participants just fly through this. Hopefully they're providing accurate information. But it is a more pleasant experience than kind of a traditional web survey, which a lot of times this kind of data is collected in. This is kind of the analogous for categorical options. In this case, they're, again, just drag and dropped into a categorical bin. and you can make change selections by just clicking a bin, and then it gets large, and then remove people if you put them in the wrong bin. There's also options for things like other, where you can have a prompt come up and they can type in the selection that they'd like to make. So those are just the basic screens. Also, obviously that's just one component. That's the app itself that we deploy. The architect is there's a alpha build of the architect coming out where people can actually play with building a survey. And the server is really the last component, but it's also an alpha build of that is also coming up soon. As I've said multiple times, this is an early alpha phase. We are in the second year of the 5-year grant, but ending the second year of the 5-year grant. And the first public beta is not until almost a year from now in April. But like I said, this is all on GitHub. So if you're brave, you can always take a look and see where the progress is. And then the final stable release is in April 2020. So as I mentioned, we're really trying to cultivate a close connection with the community with this project. So this has included a lot of going to conferences. If you're familiar with Sunbelt, always an awesome conference. We've done some kind of intense focus groups with folks to play around with it, try to get their feedback. The website's the kind of main point of contact. And we've done a number of things, including surveys. This is kind of just an interesting finding from our first survey. So it's probably hard to see, but you can, if you pulled it up, you can see. These are basically questions about how easy it is to create these tools and use them currently, and how easy it is to collect data. People think it's not very easy, but they do think that the social network community is very supportive. So hopefully we're trying to bridge that gap and trying to make a supportive community that also makes it easy to collect this data. And that's really how we see Network Canvas. The long-term goals of Network Canvas is obviously to have this kind of vibrant data collection tool that people can customize, they can use. As I mentioned, we're really trying to we hope that folks, in 2 years, get on GitHub, add stuff. This project is specifically designed for HIV and drug use research. But we hope that it extends far beyond that. So we've already started to include some things like working with network census, so you can import kind of all the nodes that you want in a network and get that data. Jimmy mentioned Jen and Neil, who is actually my dissertation advisor, use cognitive social structure data. We're also allowing that to hopefully improve the ability to collect that data, because that's also a kind of labor-intensive data collection process. All these kind of things are really on the periphery of our actual kind of main research goal, but we want to, and we're hoping that with collaboration we can include these kind of things that really make it a tool that's as broadly applicable as possible. And in that vein, we are hoping for kind of long-term sustainment through both NIH support. We're hopefully after this Sunbelt, so a year from the upcoming Sunbelt, hopefully we'll have workshops, so we can, people can really get their hands on. We can walk them through how to create this stuff. We're also already kind of beginning consultations with folks that are interested in using it and customizing certain things. And then, as I've said multiple times, really the strong community involvement. Just as a brief one example of these kind of sustainment activities, this is a project called PUG that I lead. It really builds off both the radar study and the Network Canvas project. PUG stands for Pat's Unnamed Grant, because I'm not good at coming up with names. And in fact, I didn't even come up with that one. But the basic idea is to incorporate some entity resolution within Network Canvas. So if anyone's ever collected overlapping egocentric network data, the process of deduplicating people that are named across the different interviews, so for example, if one participant names another participant, or if one participant names another person's alter, it's super labor intensive. In the radar project, when we're talking about 1,000 interviews every 6 months, it's impossible to handle. So I got this R21 to implement probabilistic soft logic, which is a kind of a statistical learning approach developed by Lisa Couture, to implement that on the radar data, and then kind of make a GUI within Network Canvas to facilitate that process. So in a couple years, hopefully there will also be kind of an entity resolution tool within the server application that can help folks that are using or collecting data where you think there's going to be overlapping kind of entities and you're getting full name data to really facilitate that process. So as I've said, if you're interested in Network Canvas, you want to get involved, website's the first place to visit. On there, we have a mailing list where we have updates. We don't spam your email, usually once a year. We'll just update you on the progress, maybe twice a year. Also, that will get you to our GitHub, basically contact info for all of the team members. And we're launching a feedback site, so anyone that, like I said, is brave enough to kind of get their hands dirty with the Network Canvas software, there's a customized kind of feedback portal that will be available through our website where you can just provide quick feedback on feature requests or if you see bugs, anything like that. And that's it. Thanks.